The chamber of the Galactic Council shimmered like a cathedral made of light, suspended in a void of endless stars. Delegates from 1,000 worlds sat in silence, their forms as varied as the galaxies they ruled, amorphous beings of gas and crystal, scaled titans, luminous entities of thought. At the heart of it all stood the holographic projection of a small blue world, Earth, rotating slowly, fragile and bright against the cosmic dark. The council had gathered to determine its fate. To most of them, the matter was already settled. Humanity was too violent, too unstable, too primitive to be trusted among the stars. Humans fear war, hissed the Cerati delegate, her translucent mandibles gleaming in the artificial light. Their history is soaked in blood. They destroy themselves for territory, for pride, for ideology. What would they do to us? The statement rippled through the chamber like static. For countless eons, the galactic powers had transcended conflict. Their empires were bound by law and reason, not by fire and blade. To hear of a species that glorified battle was almost obscene to them. Yet not all shared the same conviction. From the far end of the chamber, the Varan representative rose slowly. His body glowed like molten glass beneath his crystalline armor, and when he spoke, his voice resonated like the tolling of a great bell. They fear war, yes, he said softly, but they do not flee from it. They endure it. They survive it. No species that fears war can survive so much of it. The room stirred with unease. Survival was a sacred concept among the council, a measure of worth in a universe that devoured the weak. The presiding counselor, a being of shifting fractal geometry, turned its gaze toward the holographic display. Endurance is not wisdom, it said. Perhaps humanity survives because it cannot imagine peace. At those words, the image of Earth expanded. Battles from its history flickered in the air. Ancient soldiers in mud and smoke, iron ships burning on black seas, the silent terror of cities consumed by flame. The council watched in silence, both horrified and fascinated. No other species had waged such relentless wars and still climbed upward toward the stars. From among the silent observers, a young Varan aide spoke without permission, her voice trembling. Then perhaps that is their strength. They do not fight because they love war. They fight because something they love is always at risk. The counselor's gaze turned cold, yet thoughtful. It was a dangerous idea, one that suggested purpose in violence, meaning in suffering. But the thought lingered. When the session adjourned, the decision came swiftly. Humanity would be tested. The council would send its finest military coalition, the Galactic Vanguard, to challenge human strength not on Earth, but on the distant frozen moon of Tardos 4. There, a small research colony manned by humans would stand against an invasion designed to expose their weakness. If humanity surrendered swiftly, as predicted, it would prove the Council's fears correct. If they resisted, the test might reveal something more, perhaps something the galaxy had long forgotten. When the message reached Earth, the human governments were divided, but the military was not. From the moment the words Galactic test were spoken, one branch stepped forward without hesitation. The United States Marine Corps volunteered to defend the colony. It was not pride that drove them, but purpose. The Marines had long existed for moments when the rest of humanity hesitated. When others argued, they acted. In a quiet briefing room beneath the Pentagon, General Alan Reeves studied the transmission. His face was lined by years of service, his eyes calm but heavy. Behind him stood a small team of Marines, their uniforms marked by campaigns no alien could comprehend. Reeves looked up from the screen and exhaled. "They think we fear war," he said, his voice carrying the weight of generations. "They're wrong. We fear what happens if we don't fight." Preparation began immediately. Units were deployed to Tardos 4, a world of ice storms and endless twilight. They fortified the colony, dug trenches in frozen ground, and tested their weapons against the harsh gravity. Reports described Marines as calm, disciplined, even eager. Among them was Sergeant Luis Morales, a veteran who had seen combat across deserts and ruins back on Earth. He carried a small photo of his family in his armor, his reason for every battle he fought. "It's always the same," he told one of his men as they worked. "Different world, same sky. You fight for the people who can't." Far above, The council watched with detached curiosity. To them, this was an experiment, an academic assessment of a species too volatile for civilization. Yet among the spectators, the Varan delegate remained silent, uneasy. He sensed that what they were about to witness would not be a mere simulation of war. Humans did not play at conflict. For them, it was survival, distilled to its purest form. As the final day of preparation ended, Tardos 4 fell into a haunting quiet. The Marines stood at their posts beneath a sky streaked with auroras, the cold wind whispering across the ridges. In the distance, sensors detected the faint energy signatures of an approaching fleet, massive, disciplined, and certain of victory. Morales tightened his gloves, checked his rifle, and looked toward the horizon where the first alien ships would appear. His breath fogged the visor of his helmet as he whispered to himself, "They want to see what we're made of. Let's not disappoint them." In the galactic void, the Council's fleet prepared to descend. On Earth, news networks flashed headlines about humanity's trial among the stars. And in the heart of the Marines' outpost, a flag fluttered in the icy wind, red, white, and blue against the endless white. The test had begun, though none of the aliens watching understood what they were truly about to face. Humanity did not fear war. They feared forgetting why they fought. And as the first light of the invasion streaked across the frozen sky, every Marine on Tardos 4 understood that this battle was more than a test. It was a message. The storm began long before the enemy arrived. On Tardos 4, the sky was a swirling ocean of white, wind screaming across the plains like an unending chorus of ghosts. The Marines had been awake for 2 days, their bodies stiff from the cold, their nerves taut as drawn wire. Sergeant Morales stood in the command trench, visor glowing faintly as he reviewed the latest sensor readings. The alien fleet had entered low orbit. Hundreds of drop pods were descending through the atmosphere, each carrying soldiers engineered for conquest. The Marines knew the odds, but no one spoke of defeat. Morales glanced at his squad, faces half hidden behind frost and steel, and felt the steady calm that came before battle. "They're coming," he said quietly. "Let them." When the first wave hit, it was like watching the sky fall apart. Searing light split the clouds, and the ground trembled under the weight of plasma bombardments. The alien forces advanced in perfect formation, their armor reflecting the flashes of fire and snow. To them, this was an exercise in efficiency, a swift annihilation of an inferior species. But as they reached the human perimeter, they met resistance that defied every calculation. Machine guns roared from beneath camouflage bunkers, missiles streaked upward from hidden silos, and the frozen air filled with thunder. The aliens had expected panic. Instead, they found precision. Morales moved through the trenches like a ghost, his voice steady over the comms. "Sector 3, maintain suppressive fire. Don't waste rounds. Make them earn every meter." He stopped beside Corporal Davis, who was reloading behind a shattered barricade. "You good?" Morales asked. Davis nodded, his teeth chattering. "Cold, sir, but breathing." Morales smiled faintly. "Then you're doing better than most." A moment later, a plasma bolt tore through the ice wall above them, scattering shards like blue fire. The Marines ducked instinctively, and Morales cursed under his breath. "They're testing our line," he said. "They'll push harder next time." By mid-morning, the battlefield had become a storm of sound, explosions, shouts, static. The humans fell back in controlled movements, luring the enemy into narrow canyons lined with charges. When the aliens pressed too far, Morales gave the signal. The ground erupted beneath their feet, swallowing entire formations in a burst of light and fury. The snow turned black with ash. Yet for every enemy destroyed, more descended from the sky. "They don't stop," Davis muttered as he reloaded again. Morales watched the horizon. "Neither do we." In orbit, the Galactic Council observed the unfolding chaos through vast screens of light. To most of them, it was unthinkable. A primitive army holding its ground against the might of the vanguard. Some demanded immediate withdrawal of the test, claiming the scenario had turned barbaric. Others insisted the data was invaluable. But the Varan delegate said nothing. He simply watched, mesmerized by the human defiance flickering across the snow. It wasn't strategy that fascinated him. It was the heart behind it. The Marines weren't fighting for glory or survival alone. They were fighting for one another. Back on the surface, Morales' squad had been reduced to half its strength. The enemy was adapting quickly, their plasma shields now resisting direct gunfire. "We're running low on ammo," Davis said, breath ragged. Morales scanned the horizon, the aurora lighting his cracked visor. "Then we use their weapons," he said. "Take what they drop. Improvise." They scavenged alien rifles, studied their recoil, learned how to wield them in minutes. Adaptation had always been humanity's oldest weapon. By the second night, the wind carried the stench of burned ozone and blood. The temperature dropped to lethal levels, freezing the fallen where they lay. Morales sat inside the command shelter, his hands trembling as he adjusted the comm's frequency. Static filled his headset. Then a voice broke through. "Command to Outpost Tartos, come in." He exhaled sharply. "Outpost here." The voice on the other end hesitated. "Reinforcements are still days away. Hold your ground." Morales looked at the faces of the surviving men, their exhaustion hidden behind silent determination. "We've been holding," he replied. "We'll keep holding." When the next wave came, it was different. The aliens unleashed their war beasts, towering constructs of metal and muscle, each step shaking the frozen plains. Their eyes glowed with molten light as they charged through the smoke. The Marines met them head-on. Morales' squad split into pairs, weaving through wreckage and shattered ice, targeting weak points with grenades and armor-piercing rounds. The ground trembled beneath their boots, the world reduced to motion, noise, and survival. Morales vaulted over a ridge, firing until his rifle clicked empty, then drew a combat knife. "You want to see us fight?" he shouted into the storm. "Here we are." When the last of the beasts fell, the silence that followed was almost unbearable. The Marines regrouped, breathless, their armor scorched and dented. "We're still here," Davis said hoarsely. Morales nodded. "Then we keep going." He looked at the horizon, where alien fires painted the ice in hues of orange and violet. For a brief moment, he thought of home, the sound of rain, the warmth of sunlight, and then he buried the thought. The war wasn't over. Far above, the council's observers whispered among themselves. One spoke softly, almost in awe. "They fight even when they know the outcome cannot change." The Varan delegate finally answered, voice resonant. "They fight because the outcome must change. For them, surrender is worse than extinction." As the third dawn approached, Morales and his remaining men stood atop the ridge, surveying what was left of the battlefield. Smoke curled into the pale sky. They were cut off, their communications severed, ammunition nearly gone. Still, none moved to retreat. Morales adjusted his helmet, the frost biting his skin. "They'll come again," he said. "When they do, we'll be ready." Davis looked at him and asked quietly, "Why us, Sarge? Why do we always have to be the one standing when no one else will?" Morales' reply was simple. "Because someone has to." The wind howled through the ruins, carrying their words into cold. In the distance, faint lights glimmered, the next wave descending. Morales gripped his weapon, eyes hard. "They wanted to know if humans fear war," he murmured. "Let's give them their answer." And as the horizon ignited once more, the Marine prepared to prove it. The third dawn rose in flames. The horizon of Tardos foreglowed with the burning wreckage of alien craft, their once flawless formations now scattered across the frozen plains. Smoke drifted like ghosts through the stormlight, wrapping the broken landscape in a shroud of silence. Sergeant Morales stood among the ruins of his trench, his armor scorched, visor cracked, every breath sharp with frost and exhaustion. Around him, fewer than a dozen Marines remained, their faces pale, their eyes hollow from sleepless nights and unending combat. Above, the alien fleet reorganized, preparing for final strike. Morales knew they wouldn't survive another wave, but surrender was a word that didn't belong to their kind. He checked the last power cell in his rifle and looked at the sky. "They'll hit us with everything this time," he said, his voice steady despite the ache in his bones. Corporal Davis adjusted his helmet beside him, lips trembling from the cold. "We're outnumbered 100 to 1, he muttered. Morales managed a faint, tired smile. Then they'll have to count carefully. A quiet ripple of grim laughter passed through the survivors, not of joy but of defiance. Even in the face of annihilation, humor was their rebellion. The storm thickened as alien transports broke through the clouds, columns of fire streaking toward the surface. Morales raised his hand, signaling the last offensive formation. Hold positions. No retreat. Make them remember this place. The Marines took cover behind the shattered remnants of their bunkers, each man and woman steadying their breathing, waiting for the end. When the attack came, it was a world-ending roar. Plasma waves turned the ice fields into boiling rivers of light, and alien infantry surged through the haze like shadows with burning eyes. Morales moved from cover to cover, shouting orders through the chaos, his voice hoarse but unyielding. Left flank, push them into the canyon. Right side, hold the high ground. His commands cut through the static like a heartbeat, keeping his soldiers focused even as the ground disintegrated beneath them. Every Marine fought with desperate precision, conserving each bullet, each breath, as if every action were a final act of defiance against extinction itself. One by one, their defensive lines fell. Davis was thrown from his position by an explosion, his armor cracked open, his rifle lost in the snow. Morales dragged him behind cover, ignoring the pain in his shoulder where shrapnel burned through his suit. "Stay with me," he shouted, pressing a field dressing against the wound. Davis coughed, blood staining his lips. "You ever think we'd come this far?" Morales shook his head. "Never thought about it. Just thought about the next step." Davis grinned weakly. "Guess this is it, huh?" Morales tightened his grip on the bandage. "Not yet. Not until I say it is." The radio crackled to life then, faint but clear, a voice from orbit, a desperate transmission. "Outpost Tardos, do you copy? We're detecting massive energy readings beneath your position." Morales frowned. "Say again." The voice repeated, urgent now. "Something under the ice. Old human infrastructure. You're sitting on a mass driver platform." Morales froze, realization dawning. The research colony they were protecting had been built over one of Earth's earliest deep space defense prototypes, a weapon buried and forgotten. Hope flickered in his chest, fragile but alive. He looked to his remaining men. "We still have a chance." They stared at him in disbelief. "Sir, we can't power that thing. It's ancient." Morales pointed toward the alien flagship glimmering in the clouds. "Then we'll make it work." Under fire, they raced through tunnels of collapsing ice toward the buried control station. The interior was a relic of human engineering. Cold steel, faded insignias, consoles still flickering with ghostly light. Morales connected his suit's power cord to the main circuit, sparks leaping through the air. "If this fails," Davis said, wincing from pain, "we're vaporized." Morales smirked. "If it works, they are—" The control systems came online with a deep mechanical hum. Outside, the alien forces advanced on their location, sensing something immense awakening beneath the surface. Morales gave one last order over the comms. "All units, clear the upper ridge. Fire on my mark." The Marines withdrew, battered but resolute, as the ground began to shake. Through the ceiling of ice, streaks of plasma fire fell like rain. Morales slammed his hand against the console. "Now!" The world erupted. A thunderous shockwave split the ice, and a column of light speared upward into clouds. The buried mass driver fired, launching a steel projectile the size of a shuttle straight into orbit. The alien flagship, massive, untouchable, invincible, was struck through its core. For one brilliant moment, the sky became a burning sunrise, and then it fell apart. The ship disintegrated, fragments tumbling to the atmosphere like stars in freefall. The explosion illuminated the battlefield below, and for the first time, the Galactic vanguard hesitated. Their command was gone, their certainty shattered. The Marines, bruised and bloodied, rose from the trenches, weapons raised. Morales watched the alien line falter, then break. "That's right," he whispered. "You wanted a test. Here's your result." When the last of the invaders withdrew, silence returned to Tardos 4. The aurora shimmered across the smoking sky, and snow began to fall again, soft and endless, covering the scars of war. Morales sat beside Davis, both too exhausted to speak. The world around them was ruined, but they were alive. In orbit, the Galactic Council viewed the aftermath with disbelief. Their fleets had failed to conquer a single human detachment. The Varan delegate rose, his voice echoing across the chamber. They said humans fear war, he declared. But it is not fear that drives them. It is love, duty, and the will to endure. No one argued. Back on the surface, Morales watched the horizon where the enemy had vanished. The calms were silent. Rescue would come, eventually. But for now, there was only the cold and the quiet pride that they had stood when the galaxy demanded they fall. He reached into his armor, pulled out the worn photo of his family, and smiled faintly. "We made it," he whispered. The wind answered him a low, mournful hum, carrying his words into the frozen distance. The Marines would leave this place someday, but the galaxy would never forget it. Humanity had been tested, and the stars themselves had learned to respect their fire.